Welcome to Life Picks Relationships, helping you understand and enliven your marriage through the various perspectives and experiences of others who found a way to prioritize what's really important in life. From new love to those that have weathered the storms, let's get ready to take your relationships to the next level with your host, ST.
Hey, Life Fixers, hope we're having an awesome day. I'm super excited for today's episode. As soon as you hear something that you like or like, hey, I never thought of that, I need to go and try that, stop this episode and go and share it with someone else who you think will also go and enjoy it. Actually, you don't have to stop it. You can actually do it while you're listening. Just continue, because sometimes like after you figure like, hey, I'm going to go and send it to this person or that person, and then we forget. So do it right away as soon as you hear something else that someone else will appreciate. Now for today's episode, we have a social work therapist who helps all kinds of people, individuals, couples, people in all different stages, different phases, really going on their journey to go and become a better one of themselves. You go and find out more about him at Instagram at Eli Weinstein _LCSW. And check out his amazing podcast, Dude Therapist. You will love it. It is funny. It is interesting. There's so many topics going on there. Now, thank you so much, Ellie, for being here. I'm super excited to start speaking with you. You want to start by telling us what was something that was really funny that you did as a kid that your parents still talk about to this day?
Great question. I have a few stories because I was a very mischievous child. Well, I was a very curious child, let's be honest. One of the things that my parents still talk about as a thing that I did are two stories. One, I walked out of my house sleepwalking to my next door neighbor because I thought my house was empty, supposedly. Just left my house. And the second thing, the story that happens a lot, is that when I was about 6, I cut the power cord to the computer and blamed it on someone else who was actually in the house. Her name is Malka Siegel. Back in the day, we grew up together. And I cut the wire, this thick wire, and the electrician came and said, "Who did this?" And my parents were like, "A 6-year-old. And he didn't die. That's a huge miracle because it's like a massive fat power cord that connected all the computer wires and everything. So they do talk about that as me being a mischievous child. But I have a lot more stories. Yeah, I got a lot of them.
Yeah, well, I think curiosity is such an important base because without that, you're not going to learn anything and really go and figure things out. So I like it when kids make trouble like that because they were just curious. I'm like, let's celebrate it. They're trying to learn something. Then they get to school and afterwards they don't want to learn anymore. So
I don't think my parents looked at it that way when I was breaking things and, exploding light bulbs in toilets and putting cream all over and lipstick on things. I was a very mischievous child.
Yeah, it's hard when it's like that, but I think it changes the perspective a bit. Okay, so how has your work and the things you do affect your own marriage?
Regarding me being as a therapist?
Yeah.
It's funny because, I have permission to talk about this for my wife, so don't worry. As a therapist who works with couples a lot, and with relationships as a relationship coach, whatever that means, in the end, sometimes two things happen. One, when I work with a couple that really is distressing to me, it makes me come to my wife and go, "I love you so much. Thank you so much for being you. I appreciate the healthy marriage that we have." The second part is that sometimes when my wife and I get into arguments or we get frustrated with each other or communication falls apart, sometimes I beat myself up because I'm a therapist. I know how to do this. Why am I not getting it right? My wife might say like, why, call me out on it sometimes because I'm human. So it's funny how the dual edge of the sword of being a therapist, the assumption is you have your stuff together, but at the same time is that sometimes we don't.
Yeah, because like you said, you're still human and still think.
Yeah.
What do you find from the couples that you work with, the biggest challenge people have?
It really depends. I'm not going to start, naming all the things that I work with as with couples, but I've dealt with trauma, sexual trauma in the past, which is impacting now. Family trauma that now is impacting communication or how someone might interpret the things that happen in their marriage as being dangerous or unnerving, even though it's not. But I would say the biggest thing is communication and the openness and vulnerability to be able to have that, to be honest with each other and to be able to have those feelings heard and respected are some of the things that I see most often happen with marriages.
So how do you recommend people to go and open up and become more vulnerable?
Well, what I would say is that it really is about finding that safe place for the couple to feel safe to communicate. So a lot of times it does take couples therapy to be able to have that person who is there to kind of be that referee or that safe person. But sometimes I would make this really important caveat to couples therapy or relationship work you don't have to be in crisis or the quote unquote end of a relationship to get help. I think that a maintenance kind of couples therapy is also great. Sometimes even the healthiest couples are going to couples therapy just to learn someone's maybe attachment styles, communication styles, love languages, and things that maybe they aren't aware of as a relationship. But it doesn't mean the relationship is bad or unhealthy or destructive or abusive. It could just mean, hey, I want this to last longer and I want this to be really great while it lasts. I think is also something people have a misconception, a myth that, if we go to couples therapy, the relationship must be over. It doesn't always mean that. Sometimes it's just about making sure that things are going right.
Yeah. And it's also about like premarital counseling before it even happens, making sure and preparing totally. In that place, you actually think more and you could like see things from different perspectives because you're not in the pain of what's happening.
Yes.
So much. So did you go ever to therapy?
Individually?
Well, your individual work that you've done for sure affected your marriage.
Yeah. So I have been to therapy individually growing up and a few times over the years. Couples therapy, not particularly. Not that we're against it. It just hasn't been either the right timing. Then COVID hit and we were going to go. And then so, but in the end, it's not that I'm against it or like, I will never go to therapy. It is weird for me as a therapist to go to therapy. Not that I don't think I need it any more than anyone else or don't need help. I do believe in supervision and a therapist to have for a therapist to be able to go through cases. It's a weird thing once you become a private therapist, you lose that safety net of supervision.
Yeah. You like really need to go and make it yourself.
Exactly. Now I'm becoming a supervisor for younger therapists. It's weird for me because I know I need supervision for cases, but I'm also supervising other therapists for their cases. But in the end, I have not. But again, I want to reiterate, I'm not against it. I think it's really important. And I think if we ever did want it or need it, we would do it. Yeah.
Also, the fact that you went as yourself, like a lot of couples work that people do when they're going for couples therapy is working on their selves by themselves. So by you going to therapy by yourself, for sure affected your own marriage. Yeah. Now, how many kids do you have?
One beautiful daughter.
Aw. And I know that took some time till it actually happened, right?
Yeah, we have and continue to struggle with infertility.
And what has that done for your marriage?
I would really say this might sound weird. It made it a lot stronger because we learned through trial by fire, how we can show up for each other. It made us really address some really hard issues and hard conversations to have that a lot of couples might not ever have to talk about. The idea of what we want regarding family, the idea of pain and suffering, the idea of hope and faith being tested or being pushed to the brink of what we can handle, maybe as a couple or individually, and also learning what each person needs for their mental health and their self-care away from the couple, as well as the mental health and care for the couple. So I really believe that through that process, not that I didn't trust or respect my wife, not that I didn't think that she was my everything and my rock, but I definitely solidified for me my reliance and need for her as well, hopefully her for me.
Oh, yeah. Taking those challenges and making them, not that we want them, but making the most of them and really getting out of it. Now, does your wife like it that you're a therapist? Like, does she feel like you're always so-called therapying her?
Well, I like to call it therapizing, which is not a real word whatsoever.
As if therapying her is a word either.
But I would say this, I don't know if she likes the fact that I'm a therapist. I don't think she dislikes it. She knows that it's something that I love to do. And it's my passion. It's my drive. I don't think she likes how many books I buy because I'm a therapist, but hopefully it can be deductible for taxes one day. But in the end, I think that it makes me being a therapist is one of the reasons I am a therapist is because I'm a caring, feeling human being. So a guy who's feeling in touch with emotional awareness and is a positive for relationships. So the fact that I'm a therapist is kind of a byproduct of the other things that make me who I am. So those things are great. Me being a therapist doesn't matter. She just didn't want me to be a doctor so that I would actually be home. Little did she know that my crazy hours sometimes impact that. But in the end, I am a therapist and I'm very driven. I have a podcast. I do podcasts. I public speak. I do a lot of things all over the place. So she's comfortable being the solidified job, 9 to 5, 9 to 6. She likes that role. And she understands and embraces my role as the crazy schedule kind of person.
So what does she do?
Oh, she's a dietitian in a hospital.
Okay. So working with people,
Yeah.
helping them become better in their own way. Now, what's one ritual that you do in your marriage that you think makes your relationship so amazing?
A ritual that we have this little thing that I don't know why I started doing it before we go to bed. Say like a little like mantra, like a little thing that we do. It's something that's between us. It's our little like thing that we do that like it reminds us that we say it every night to each other. That reminds us that we love each other and we're there for each other. And that's something that I think is really good. But it's also, I wouldn't even say just rituals. It's just daily things that, it's the I love yous, the how was your day, those things, those check-ins, those being connected, the intimacy of that. Not that intimacy has to be always in the bedroom, but intimacy just in the daily life that we have just creates this sense of love. And it doesn't mean that we're always goo goo gaga over each other. It doesn't mean that we're, lovey dovey all the time. We get into arguments, we have frustrations. It's natural for couples to get that way. But we do have this solidified kind of things that are those pillars of our day, or usually at night, that we end off on a good note.
Yeah. So even though like you're just being human and like everyone else have those things going on, you still make sure that you're staying really strong. But what would you say is your biggest challenge in your marriage?
I think it's sometimes being present. I think in the day and age that we're in, being pulled in very different directions, it's sometimes hard to always be present. And I also think the biggest challenge for a lot of people, not just myself, is also letting the other person have their space and embracing that and not taking it as a offense, but more of a opportunity for them to be their own person, and respecting that space as well is very important.
It's interesting that you say that, not trying to like put anyone in groups or anything, but usually a lot of times women say that much more than men, because the men like their space a lot more. That from what I've heard.
I would say that in more of my who I am as a human being, I am more of a feminine energy regarding, and not that my wife isn't, but I think on most days I'm more of the feminine energy and my mentality, my thought process, and how I kind of run my communication.
And does she then at that time go more in the masculine energy or not especially?
No, it depends on the conversation, depends on the thought process, depends on the day. But I think that every marriage and every relationship wants that present person. They want them to be connected and there. But I think there's so many distractions in the world that we live in, whether it's social media, whether it's our phones buzzing every 5 seconds, whether it's TV, whether it's family stressors, all the things that happen in daily life, and even COVID is a hard thing to always be present. And I think that's just a baseline issue that a lot of couples struggle with as well.
So do you have any recommendations on that?
Yeah. Have a conversation about what you might need from the other person to show up when you need them to. So yeah, let's say you're distracted on social media. Let's say you're reading a book or you're doing things that pulls you away from the couple. If the other person wants your attention, instead of brooding and being resentful, talk to the person about it. Say, hey, I would love to spend a couple minutes with you, or let's play a game, let's talk, let's do something together. All I need is a 5-10 minutes or a check-in or something like that. And maybe, or set a time, like a date night, to really have that moment and that pillar of your week, to know that you have that person, no distractions, which why I believe personally as a religious Orthodox Jew, Sabbath is so important for families, because it takes away the distractions. What distractions do you have? You go to prayer services, you have meals with each other, you're with each other, you're on walks, you're spending time with hopefully friends and family, hopefully that things are opening up. It's great. And I think that sometimes that could be a huge, huge help for marriages and relationships and families.
Yeah. And if marriage is in trouble, then it's like a bit of the opposite.
Sometimes, right? Sometimes, because then you don't have the distraction.
Right. But no one will force you to really go and work things out. Now, what was the best relationship advice you've ever received?
I think recently, the old school mentality of like, don't go to bed angry, was my grandmother told me. And being a therapist and reading a lot more and understanding relationships more, I've taken more of the advice of it's okay to give someone time to be upset. I think that the best advice I've gotten was that, like, it's okay for the person to be upset. People get upset. It's two humans interacting in a closed encounter space, trying to run a home together, trying to be together. It's okay when someone gets frustrated. It's okay for them to have feelings. It's how you show up after those feelings happen and how you repair those feelings and how you deal with it is really the biggest key. So don't be afraid for the other person to have big feelings, good or bad, angry, upset, sad, happy. It's what we do when those kind of things calm down to when you communicate and how you then move forward going afterwards.
Yeah, I think people think emotions are a bad thing, and they're just neutral. They're a sign. They tell us something about something. They're not good or bad in any which direction. But people who don't know how to deal with emotions themselves can't stand it when other people are like have emotions. So if your partner is having strong emotions, probably because when you get really angry, when you get really frustrated, you don't know how to deal with it and you don't know what to do. So it makes you even more annoyed when your partner is.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just hard to see someone get emotional that you care about or you're not used to. Who knows how you were raised? Who knows if emotions were a healthy thing or you were told that they were healthy things growing up? Could really impact how you then view when someone you care about or love does step up in that way and show up in those emotions, and it kind of could freak people out.
Yes. So what if someone finds themselves in this situation? What do you suggest they could do?
The situation of where they don't know how to handle someone's emotions?
Yeah.
That's a really great time to go to therapy, couples therapy or individual therapy, to learn how to deal with emotions, because emotions happen every day. You got to learn how to deal with it. You know, we are emotional beings. We are emotional, feeling human beings, no matter what you do in life, whether it's for jobs, whether it's for family, with relationships, and with yourself, you're going to have to learn how to handle emotions. It's a key success of human beings. And if you can't learn how to read emotions or handle emotions or process emotions, it can be detrimental to your future life. So get help. Talk to someone.
Your future life. Yeah, your kids' lives. Every time they're going to cry, you just tell them to stop crying. It's not processing emotions.
People think that that's a very big coddling thing nowadays, the old school parents. But the modern day parent is someone who's involved with their kids and lets them have their feelings, but explains them and lets them process it. It doesn't shut them down. So it's very important to kind of connect with your kids and help them learn that emotions are healthy. All emotions are healthy in moderation, and how we can then process them and move forward.
Yeah. Label them, sit through them, get what the message is trying to give to you, and then really use it to your benefit.
Yeah.
Now, do you use the 5 love languages in your marriage?
By use it, you mean know about it?
Like, as a therapist, I'm sure you know about it. Reading all those books, you for sure like tell people about it, not just like know about it. More than that. Question is like how conscious you are of it, or you're like, no, we just have a really good relationship and we don't specifically need to think about it so much on a daily basis.
Well, I think it's important to know what your partner's love languages are, so that to help you kind of build a strong connection. I know for me, my love languages are words of affirmation, physical touch, and gift giving, or doing something for others, or doing something for you. And I know my wife is quality time, words of affirmation, and physical touch.
So you do have some overlap.
Yeah. So sometimes my quality time is not my key thing. Not that I don't value it. My wife is more about vacations and spending time together and all those things. So because I know that, and it took me time to process and understand that, because I wasn't in tune to that. And once I was, when my wife says, let's go do something, instead of it being an argument or a frustration of, no, I'm tired. It's, oh, I understand that you're trying to connect. So and I'm a big gift giver. My wife is not. So when I have expectations of getting gifts and I give gifts, if I don't understand the thought process of what's going on, it could be a huge argument, or it could be like, oh, okay, I get it. I understand. Doesn't mean it doesn't hurt sometimes. It doesn't mean that there aren't feelings that people get stepped on because they know that. Just because you know the love language doesn't mean that you're perfect at it or understand it fully to know which scenario. But it is an important conversation to understand your partner and what makes them happy and what makes them feel seen, cared for, and respected.
Right. And then even if you know their love language is like type, if let's say you both have like physical touch, but what type of physical touch, what is specifically for this person? Because you could be thinking you're giving physical touch, but they don't like that type of physical touch. So really just having those conversations and opening it up. Now, you mentioned before earlier that one of the problems that you see a lot in marriages is from like trauma or things that they have seen from the past. Has your own parents' relationship or the people, your friends, your family's relationships that you've seen, has that had any effect on your own marriage?
Yeah, I think everyone has that. I think we all have that struggle of how we learn what love is and what relationships are, whether it's good or bad. You know, if you grew up in a home that was extremely argumentative, chaotic, and volcanic, it's going to impact how you view relationships and maybe how you end up showing up in a relationship, versus the opposite side of growing up in a home that is loving, caring, and calm or tranquil could then change how you interact with your relationship. You know, when I was getting married to my wife, and in the Jewish circles, there's this chassan and kala classes, right? This groom and bride classes that people take with either rabbis or mentors, or rebbitzins, you know, wife of a rabbi, and really kind of learn the ins and outs of the Jewish laws when it comes to marriage. The Rabbi Galler, his name is Rabbi Josh Galler in West Hempstead, who I'm a huge fan of and love his perspective and his thought process on. And he's an amazing human being and a great dresser, really, really great dresser. He really talked about this concept that he uses a lot called the import-export list, where he makes you and your significant other sit down and discuss, okay, you both have your family, you both have your cultures, you both have your traditions, you both have the way you grew up. What do you want to import from that with each other for each other's relationship? Or what do you want to export? What do you want to get rid of? So if you grew up in a home that did certain traditions that you didn't really like or care for, are you going to still do that? Or is that going to change for your family, devoid of what your families did? And it took us about an hour and a half, and we wrote this little list, and we go through it every year on an anniversary. And my wife
you
keeps
actually go back to it. I like that. Because like you could like totally just plan and then completely forget about it.
Yeah, we edit it. We see, are we still in line with what we thought? Are those things that we thought were important for our family still important for our family? Do we readjust? How do we restructure? It's like a check-in for our values as what we want for our relationship / our family for our future. It's always important to have that discussion. It kind of gives it like a list, and kind of, we did it in pencil, I think, or pen, and we edit it. And sometimes we take away things, or we sometimes fall off the track of what we want for our family, and then we readjust and reassess.
I like that. I like that so much. But what happens if, let's say you say, okay, I don't want this. Say, for example, my parents always scream at me, so I don't want them to scream anymore. Do you say how you're going to do it instead? Or is it just like, okay, we're not going to scream anymore?
Well, I think it's impossible to tell someone you're never going to do something. So I think it's really important to come up with a plan. So my wife and I are against screaming in the household. We just don't like that. It's not something that we enjoy. We don't like to be yelling and screaming. And I think it's something that if we do get to that point where we kind of take a break and kind of step away so we can take a breather. It doesn't mean we don't yell. It doesn't mean we don't get frustrated. It doesn't mean that screaming does not happen, but it's something that is a value of our family that we try to keep to. And it's really about discussing, okay, so you don't want to do that in our marriage. You don't want to do this in our relationship. How do we then do it? And to have the discussion. Are there exceptions? Are there rules? Are we sticking to those rules? What if someone breaks the rule? Do you then use it against me? So it's really about having those really open conversations about how you want to implement the kind of core values of your family.
I like that. I like it so much, especially the rules part and the exceptions part, because you could say there's no screaming, but certain times if there's a fire, then like, I think it might be better to scream. And we have that mindset of like, okay,
offended, right? It's like, what? It's not the time to go, oh, you screamed at me, I'm going to cry. It's like, no, there's a fire. We need to go.
Exactly. Okay. So before we get to our final question, where could Life Fixers connect with you and learn more about you?
For sure. So I'm basically on Instagram. My Instagram handles are Eli Weinstein _LCSW, which is my main therapy, inspiration, motivation kind of stuff. And I also have my podcast account called The Dude Therapist. And you can listen to The Dude Therapist.
Check it out.
Thank you. You can listen to The Dude Therapist on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcast, Amazon, Pandora, whatever it is. It's called The Dude Therapist because I'm a dude who is a therapist. I don't just work with dudes. I just thought it was a catchy name. And working on a professional website as we speak to make it more concise. But I have a website now called ELIvation.org, which is more for my public speaking and coaching days back in the day.
So you don't have to speak anymore, I guess.
I do.
Oh, you still do?
Okay. I do through Zoom, but it's more that's going to be a little piece of my more professional website versus the whole entirety of the website.
Awesome. Okay. So for our final question, how would you describe an extraordinary relationship without using the words love, connection, or intimacy?
I think the best relationship without using those words is to be seen and respected. I think when the partners feel seen and respected, there is this deep, deep wholeness that comes and fulfillment that comes because sometimes you don't get that from other people. So to know that you can come home and have someone who sees you, the ups and the downs, the weaknesses and the strengths, your job, your passions, your drives, and sees and respects that, you want to do that for them as well. And if you're both doing that for each other, it doesn't mean you don't go through hard times. It doesn't mean that things don't get to you, but you know that person is in your corner, seeing you and respecting you through it all. And that to me is one of the biggest foundations of a healthy relationship.
Yeah, you feel understood, you feel connected, the other person has your back at all times. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Eli. This was amazing.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's all for this episode of Life Picks Relationships, and we have a huge favor to ask of you that will not only support this show, but also give others what they need to take their marriage to the next level. We're striving to have 1 million downloads per episode by December 31st, 2025, so please share it with your family and friends so they can turn their relationship into an extraordinary one.